Assalamu alaikum, guys. If you watched last week's episode, I gave a little disclaimer at the beginning where I mentioned the practical side of the discussion and the scientific and social side of the discussion at the beginning, and then I talked about the text after. And it was my worry that you would only watch the beginning, which was the scientific element, and not make it towards the text. And today, in similar fashion, I have that similar worry. I spent about 15-20 minutes talking about the scientific element at the beginning, and then we started to talk about the text after. Intimacy is a huge part of marital life, and it's actually one of the foundational problems for the majority of relationships that break down and end up in divorce. Okay, and also infidelity. For that reason, it's my plea towards you that you remain patient throughout the entirety of this, where you watch the beginning where we talk about the scientific element, because that helps you to understand a lot of the wisdoms and the reasons behind the text that is to follow.
Yeah.
So,
and also get an understanding of the surah, like what we're actually speaking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So be patient, basically.
Yeah. And I was also going to say that think about, like, these instructions that we get from the Quran and Sunnah, wallahi, they're mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine if He created us and put us on the earth and gave us no instructions. We had no idea what we were supposed to do. But at least we have that, we have something from our Creator. He created us and also even told us how we work as well. Look at that, man. So it doesn't make sense that we go back to other people who are also created just like you to tell you how you work. And we don't go back to the Creator, who's the one who made you in the first place.
Exactly. So with that said, Aman, please roll the snippets. Peace. The sexual need inside of a person is something extremely natural. When you deprive someone of drink, they suffer. When you deprive them of money, they suffer. When you deprive your spouse of their sexual need, they suffer. When a spouse asks you for that basic right, it's a way for them to receive love, and it's very vulnerable. It's not the kind of thing you just ask any random stranger.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, welcome back to another episode of Relationship Goals. As always, this is the Sunnah Match. This is the official Sunnah Match podcast. Judging by the title, I would, to be honest, even at this point, I don't even know what the title is. I just know that whatever it is, you can't do it unless you get married. So, Sunnah Match is obviously our matchmaking service. We have profiles on there for you to check out. You make your own profile, you request people say yes to you, people say no. Hopefully people don't say no to you, but people say yes to you, people say no to you. You find out, you call the wali, or if you're the girl, you hope for your wali to get called, and things get popping, and then later down the line you can do whatever it says in the title, inshallah. So without further ado, today we're talking this is not much awaited. I would have thought that by now people would be saying, we're roasting for the episode about intimacy, but to be honest, people already asked for it. I feel like maybe they have the whole thing figured out, which is part of the problem. It's funny because we're going to get to it, inshallah, but today's episode is about intimacy, intimate relations.
It's one angle of intimacy.
Yeah, obviously it's a very large topic, and we can't really cover all of it in one go. I think that we'll be able to touch on different things.
Because there's what you can do, what you can't do, the manners and etiquettes of intimacy. We briefly touched upon it in the wedding night episode, but that was not really it. Today we're trying to focus on the obligation that each spouse has to satisfy the intimate sexual needs of the other.
Beautiful. That's what we're going to get to. And this is a very important conversation. I think I mentioned this previously the other day also, but I think it's good, obviously with no lewdness, no explicitness, and I hope inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to discuss it within its rights, give this topic, give this conversation its needs, because it's a very underspoken conversation in our communities, and I understand why. Believe me, I know it's wrong, but I understand why people don't speak about it. It's obviously, it's difficult. It's intimate. It's private. It's something that people don't need to hear about. And if they don't go about speaking about it from the Quran and Sunnah, which inshallah we're going to hope to do today, they're speaking about their personal experiences, and obviously they can't really do that. You're not supposed to talk about that. I mean, we might speak about that one day as well. Yep. The privacy that the bedroom requires. You shouldn't speak about your relations with other people. As much as a lot of fathers want to have that, that talk with their sons, he can't go up to you and obviously tell you what's going on behind the scenes with him and his spouses. So Yeah, can you imagine? Obviously, so I understand why, but it's a very needed discussion, especially in our hypersexualized society. People are learning about sexual relations from left, right, and center. Tom, Dick, and Harry are talking about this and that, and it's a very polluted situation. There's a lot of white noise, and I hope that it's not even white noise, it's gray noise, and I hope that the Quran and the Sunnah, obviously I know it will do, but I'm saying hopefully for everyone who's listening, it can provide a very clear light for everyone, so we know how to navigate this, inshallah. So without further ado, as a result of a lack of discussion on this topic, and I feel like I think it's wrong for people to assume that you'll be inherently good at something that you don't know anything about. Even if you think it's natural or etc. So it's like eating, for example. You know that you have to eat, but when you're growing up, your parents teach you how to eat. All the food goes in your mouth. You're not like spitting it out halfway through.
Yeah, but I'm not going to teach them any of that.
No, I know that's not what I mean. I'm saying that naturally, even if it's something that you need and require, there's no reason to assume that you'd be good at it or you understand how important it is. All of those things.
I'm just going to teach them understanding.
Of course, no. And as a result, I'm saying that this discussion is important, and the ignorance of this topic causes a lot of divorce. It causes a lot of heartbreak. People get really like. I read a comment the other day when I was researching. Sorry, I read a comment when I was researching this topic, and it said divorce. It starts in the bedroom and ends in the courtroom. And I was like, sad to say, but I mean, from what I've heard from you and what I've heard from other people who do marriage counseling, it seems to be true.
Oh, 100%. It starts off with problems in the bedroom and it ends
in the courtroom.
I mean, for the kuffar.
Yeah. No, I mean, we would have courtroom as well.
We have the qadi, the judge.
Yeah. Qadi room. Yeah.
I mean, husband the divorce can take place without going to court.
I get it. So I'm happy for us to have this discussion under the pretense of, like I mentioned before, in the Quran and the Sunnah, because it's tough to say that you should be shy in a discussion when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger were not shy to speak about it. Obviously not, like I said before, as I mentioned previously, we're not going to be unnecessarily lewd or explicit. All of that stuff is a different thing, and hopefully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow us to be free from that. But in terms of giving this discussion its right, I hope that we can do that, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to. So, without further ado, tafaddal, brother.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before we dive into the discussion, there are a few preliminary things that I want to outline. Okay. And that is that firstly, I want to identify exactly what it is that we're going to talk about today. As I alluded to prior, we're going to talk about the obligation upon each spouse to fulfill the sexual needs of the other spouse. Okay, and underline the word obligation, meaning there's something you must do. Something's obligatory, if you do it, you get rewarded. If you don't do it, you
punishable.
You are deserving of punishment. You are now sinful. Now, in order to understand, so that's one element. But the other thing I want to also do is make you understand why it's obligatory. Meaning, why is it so rewarded when you fulfill the rights of your spouse?
And why is the religion so specific and in some ways quite harsh about how the ramifications of falling out of this can be?
Exactly. And I want to identify those two things at the beginning. And in doing so, I hope to, inshallah ta'ala, bring two things to attention. Number one is the complete wisdom of the Sharia of Allah Azza wa Jal, in basically facilitating for us perfection in every one of our human situations, whether it be our ibadah, our servitude and worship to Allah, whether it be our mental health, whether it be our marital relationships, whether it be our financial relations, whatever it may be, our societal communal relationships, governmental relationships. The Sharia of Allah Azza wa Jal is perfect. It solves all of our problems. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, I must bring to your attention that after I present evidences to you, it's upon you to submit. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Allah said, none of you will truly be believers they will not be true believers. They will not have true iman, complete iman, until when they are in situations of differing and argumentation and disputation, they come to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam for judgment, and he judges for them, and they submit to his judgment without finding anything in their heart towards the judgment. Three things. So if you're differing and you're arguing, you and your wife are arguing, you have problems inside of your relationship, you're arguing, there's disputation taking place, you have to come to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam for judgment. You have to then submit to his judgment, and you have to not find anything in your heart against that judgment. So today, inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to give you the judgment of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when it comes to the intimacy for the spouses. We're going to give it to you, inshallah ta'ala. And if after this you still oppress and deny your spouse, then you are a person who, number one, it's indicative of your iman being incomplete, and you are a person who's deserving of huge ramifications from Allahu Azza wa Jal. Do you see? Now, with that said, inshallah ta'ala, let's talk about the importance, before we come to the text, the importance of fulfilling the rights and the desire of your spouse. You see, the sexual need inside of a person is something extremely natural. And it's interesting because we hear people say this, they repeat this, that the intimacy is a human need, just as food and drink. And they always give that example of food and drink. And I just find it quite interesting that the thing that Allah tested us with when it came to fasting was withholding from food, drink, and
intimacy, and
intimate desires, into intercourse with your spouse.
Yeah.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَالْآنَ بَاشِرُهُنَّ وَابْتَغُوا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that we're allowed to engage in intimacy, eat and drink. حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود من الفجر ثم أتموا الصيام إلى الليل. We're allowed to engage in food, drink, and intimacy except when the timing of fasting comes into place. Now we must withhold. Do you see? So because it's such a human thing to eat, to drink, to engage in intimacy, we're now being tested by putting Allah and servitude to him above our own basic desires. The point here is that it's a basic desire. Do you see? And a person shouldn't be made to feel bad, when there's a husband who wants intimacy from his spouse more so than she wants, and when there's a wife that wants it more from her husband, they should not make the other feel bad because Allah naturally put this desire in them. In another ayah, Allah said, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed inside of the men the desire for the women. Allah put it in him. He desire. He wants. It's a natural desire. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to talk about the desire for other things like children. The way you desire children. The way it's so natural to want children. The way you desire money. Dhahab wal fidda, gold and silver, currency, money, wealth. The way you want food. The way you want money. The way you need money. I should say. The way you need food. The way you need wealth. You need sexual intercourse, okay? To the point where scholars even discuss about it solving a lot of mental health issues. Imam Ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned, if there's a person who's going through a lot of stress, one of the things that relieves the stress is to go to his wife. He actually mentioned in the context of a student of knowledge who's struggling, who's going through some problems in his life, he's not able to study, he's finding it hard. He should go to his wife. He should be intimate with his wife, because it takes a lot of stress away, because there's a lot of build up, what I'm saying? Emotional, physical, mental build up and inside of a person, and
it's like a form of tension.
A form of tension, what I'm saying? But with that sexual release, eases it. Does that make sense? What's worse is that sexual frustration is a part of that build up. Does that make sense? Is that the lack of intercourse is part of that stress. Does that make sense? So obviously when a person engages in that way, so the point that I'm trying to make is that it's extremely natural. Now let me ask you a question. Okay, when you deprive someone of a natural need, the need for food, the need for money, what happens?
There's a had, so the person holds it in for as long as they can, and then when that had is reached, it's a form of revolution. They revolt in some way or another. Something happens. It's like, for example, if you put a bunch of, I know that maybe this is a maybe this is a crude example, but if you put a bunch of rats in a barrel and they don't have anything to eat and you just leave them there, they will start eating one another.
Yeah.
As in, they've passed that had, and now it's time to.
Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah. And now it's time. They've got to eat. They have to eat eventually.
Well, that's my point. But so you went to the natija, but my point was, what is the immediate? You're right. As in, there's a build up and then there's an explosion.
Yeah.
And then that explosion usually manifests in problems, arguments, ultimately divorce.
Yeah.
Right. But my point was that they're suffering. Which is the rats are suffering, and that suffering leads them to do something barbaric, like eating each other. So then again, when you deprive someone of food, they suffer.
Of course.
When you deprive someone of drink, they suffer. When you deprive them of money, they suffer. When you deprive them of health, they suffer. When you deprive them of the ability to go to excrete or urinate, they suffer. When you deprive your spouse of their sexual need, they suffer. It's interesting because as we saw earlier, there was a study that was done, and we'll reference them to a lot of the studies and whatnot they were mentioning at the end. Remind me if I forget, inshallah ta'ala. There was a study that was done where they done an MRI scan of people that felt like sexual rejection in their relationships that led to divorce.
Yeah.
And they saw that the same part of their brain that was stimulated
during that period,
during the period of sexual rejection was the same part of the brain that lights up when you feel physical pain.
Physical pain, yeah.
Do you understand? Yeah. So if I starve someone and I beat someone to a pulp, there is a part of their brain that will be engaged.
Yeah, that will respond.
That in correspondence to that pain. Okay. Now, when you deprive someone of their sexual desire, when someone reaches out to you in the bedroom and you refuse them, okay, they suffer in the same way on a neurological level.
Yeah,
they suffer in the same way as a person who is feeling physical pain, and even a person going through depression and sadness.
It's not the same. Yeah,
it's not the same.
That was the objective of the study. Yeah,
it's not the same place. So as in the point we're making is that it's not to say that mental pain and physical pain is the same or they're different. But this particular type of mental stress, like frustration is a type of stress, right?
Yeah.
So stress activates a particular part of the brain, but sexual frustration activates the same part of the brain as when you're being physically beaten. Does that make sense?
That's mad.
It's extremely painful. Does that make sense? It's extremely painful. Now, because think about it, right? For you to offer yourself, or to invite your spouse, or to request from your spouse to be sexually intimate with you is a very vulnerable, very vulnerable
I was gonna
thing.
say that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say you have to make yourself vulnerable.
Like, can we have
the avenue for rejection is open, and you've opened it willingly. That's tough, man.
Now, what you have to understand is that this is coming from a place of love. You know, when we talked about in the previous episodes about the love languages and whatnot, and you know, it's interesting because you know the ayah وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu mentioned how there can be love and mercy between relationships. He said, how can there be love? He said, you fulfill each other's rights, and one of the primary rights is intimacy. Do you see? Now, if on a woman's right is money. Now, imagine there was a man who was just not providing anything for his wife. Not paying the bills, not putting clothes on her back, not putting food on the plate. He wasn't doing anything for her from her rights. How would she feel?
Obviously, it's going to be like, am I even your wife? Yeah.
Like, what are you doing for me? Does that make sense? And it will be hard for there to be any love. And he can say, but look at how sweet.
At the very least, you can expect resentment to start settling. It will settle eventually.
Do you understand?
At some point in time.
Why? Because she left her father's house to come to you to be able to cater for her needs.
And it should be clarified that doesn't make her a gold digger or some money chasing woman. It's like these are her basic rights. These are her basic rights.
Does that make sense?
She gets to get this stuff whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So the point that we're making here is that when a spouse asks you for that basic right, it's a way for them to receive love. Does that make sense? And it's very vulnerable. It's not the kind of thing you just ask any random stranger, hey, do you think we could have intimacy? And I'll tell you something, even though it would be completely inappropriate to ask a stranger to give you intimacy, but if the stranger was to reject you, it would hurt you a lot less than your wife
100%.
or your husband. You know why?
Because like, who is this person?
Because that person's nothing to you. You know, do you know why?
That's an indication to you that it's from the angle of love. It's not like a, I just need to, release.
Exactly.
That's different, because then anyone could fit that bill, innit? Yeah.
Exactly. And I'll tell you something, like what further kind of an analogy that to show you how much it hurts and why it hurts so much is that, sometimes you might bite your tongue slightly, but it causes ever so much pain, right?
Yeah.
You bite your tongue slightly, but
that's a lot.
It's excruciating pain.
Yeah.
Some of the wise ones, they say, the reason why your tongue feels so much pain when the teeth accidentally bite it so lightly is because of the close relationship. So the closer you are to something,
proximity. Yeah.
The closer you are in relationship to something, when that something or someone hurts you, it hurts more because of how close they are to you. You see? Yeah. So when your wife, who you're supposed
poetry, or like that's nice.
It's nice, right? Because look how Allah described how close the husband and wife are. Allah said, "Hunna libasul lakum wa antum libasul lahun."
Yeah.
Allah said, they are a clothing for you, are a garment for you, and you're a garment for them. Meaning you're naked.
Yeah.
When it comes to your wife, you're
Older
naked.
than that. No,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm saying you're naked.
Throw that in there.
Yeah. I'm saying you're naked.
Yeah.
And being naked is something that's very exposed.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? It's very
that's
vulnerable.
Your highest level of vulnerability. Yeah.
Like all your insecurities are out in the open, and it's for your spouse to clothe you, to cover you, and in a sense to be with you, but to complete you, to cover your blemishes, to overlook your shortcomings, to clothe you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So imagine you're with your spouse and you're standing there naked, not literally, as in, but
no, as in you've exposed yourself. Of course.
But by you asking, you may be fully clothed, but you've asked, you've exposed yourself, you've made yourself. Can we do it? Right. So you've opened yourself up to her or to him.
Yeah.
You've basically, you like I said, you're naked. You've exposed yourself, and for them to reject you.
It's they're like, whoa, you left me out in the cold.
Yeah, it's like literally imagine like someone's literally naked in the streets and just laughing at them.
Or they're like, listen, can I have a jacket?
Yeah,
and you just air it. It's like,
do you understand?
There's a certain type of coldness you have to do that.
Or rather, what you've done is you turned the AC on. You made it even colder for them. You see? So
no, and then they question it. They start wondering like, why is my marriage going downhill? And it's like it's a place of warmth and comfort, and you just invited. Like I hate to stick with the temperature analogies, but you just brought coldness into your world. Didn't even have cold before. Tundra didn't exist in your world, but now it does. You've brought it out.
And this is the point: is that at this stage, like because you have to understand what's happening psychologically, you have to understand what's happening neurologically, and you have to understand what's happening physically. Physically, your spouse has got this natural need. So natural, so natural. It's so natural,
and they cannot be faulted for
it. And they are struggling with it. They need it to be fulfilled. You're gonna cause them to end up going towards haram.
We'll talk about that after. Yeah, go on.
But the point is that's there. Okay, mentally, you've just broken them. Like you've just caused them so much grief, so much humiliation.
It's a form of trauma.
It's a trauma. It's trauma and it's rejection.
Yeah.
And neurologically, you've made them neurologically respond as if they were being physically beaten.
Yeah.
Actually, this is adab.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
This is oppression.
Yeah, it's a dhulm. There's no doubt about it. But I think the religion.
And the thing is, because we have this thing of sexual freedom and sexual expression nowadays, and my body and I do what I want, and da. Like people are scared to kind of express their want and their need for the sexual desire when a partner is not willing to give.
Yeah.
They feel like almost, what do you mean? It's my body.
Yeah.
And then obviously but
then you've forgotten that the nikah that you've entered makes your body a right for someone else.
It does, but I'm going to come to that inshallah ta'ala. But the point is that what happens in this day and age is that when they get rejected in that way, what happens is that they will just go and sleep with someone else.
Essentially. If we're playing by these rules, then that's what's going to happen, isn't it?
And then and what's the other partner going to do? Also going to go to someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's okay for them because that's their scapegoat. That's their scapegoat. But for us, you gave a beautiful analogy earlier. You were like, you can't do that because it's like, if you want to go buy something from a shop that you need, like you want some food from the shop, but they refuse to serve you for whatever reason, you can go to another shop. Yeah. And if they refuse you, there's 100 other shops you can go to satisfy your need. But but your sexual need you can get from only one person.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if you deny her or she denies you, then where else are you gonna go in a halal way?
You're a captive. You're a prisoner to that idea. Like, as in, the person's just of their own volition for whatever. You don't even. A lot of the time I feel like people don't really communicate. That might be that's part of the problem. They don't say reasons.
No,
they don't talk.
No, they do communicate.
Okay.
I think they do.
Okay.
But this is what their communication kind of transpires in. Yeah.
Go on.
Is that he says to her, for example, after a long time, and I use the example of he, but she as well, because unfortunately a lot of women suffer from this as well.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So he says to her, or she says to him, can we engage in intercourse today?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you mind if we have some intercourse today? And she responds to him in some, I'm really busy today.
Mm-hmm.
But he's already had a dry spell. It's been a while. It's been a few weeks, maybe they haven't even done it, right? So he's just
basically, what you're trying to say is that the had that I mentioned earlier, we're coming to, like, he's understanding that. Listen,
I'm just talking about the point that you mentioned about communication. I'm trying to show how I'm trying to show they do communicate, but even how that doesn't work.
It's not effective.
Because of the frustration that's at play. So I'm saying he's communicating to saying, can we do it?
Yeah.
And then she says to him, or he says to her, I'm sorry, I'm just not feeling it today for whatever reason.
Okay.
No, but there's a dry spell. So there's frustration. So he looks back and he says, what do you mean? Like, come on, man. Like, it's been so long. Or she says, like, why do you always this? Why do you do this? Now his tone's changed. He's getting upset now. He's getting angry now. So she responds, or he responds with, well, if you speak to me in that way, of course we're not going to have intercourse. How do you expect me to get intimate with you and you talk to me in that way? Then it's a fight. Does that make sense? And then another 2-3 weeks go by, and it's
like the last time you guys spoke about this, I had it was like a weird kind of interaction.
But what you don't understand is that now resentment starts to build. So they are talking, but what's happening is that the communication is on the back of a lot of frustration. So a lot of times the person gets quick to anger, the person gets quick to frustration. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when they get quick to anger and frustration, the ones who's already depriving get even more offended. Does that make sense? Until it just climaxes in a big fight, and then they get further away from actually being intimate.
Yeah.
So the problem here,
which was the cause of the problem in the first place.
Which was the cause of the problem in the first place, the lack of intimacy. Does that make sense? So this is the height of oppression. This is the height of oppression, and it's really not fair, because when you get married, and this is the point that you mentioned earlier, when you get married, you both agree to be together. Does that make sense? And when you move into a house, you both agree you're going to move into the house together. When you move, when you make big decisions in life, you both agree to do those things together. But when it comes to sexual intimacy, and there's one spouse who's depriving another, this is a common right that Allah Azza wa Jalla gave to the both of you, but one is now deciding whether or not the other person gets it or not. Yeah. And that's oppression. Does that make sense? Like, imagine your spouse never considered you in any of the decisions they made.
Yeah, exactly.
For example, where you live, where the children are raised, what country you live in, what job they do, what this, what that, da-da-da. Imagine all the decisions
No, I mean, people have a problem when, if one person orders food from a place and they didn't talk about it. It's like, you didn't ask me if I wanted pizza or pasta or sushi or whatever, and you just ordered without me. It's like, whoa,
So imagine something like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a mutual thing. Does that make sense? It's a mutual thing. And then what usually happens, what transpires from this, is that one spouse says, "Look, I'm just not into it. I'm tired, and whatever have you." So this is where the issue of like really mercy kicks in. This is the issue of where mercy kicks in, where a person has to be merciful to put the needs of their spouse above their own needs. Does that make sense? And research has actually shown that when there is a spouse within the relationship who doesn't want to actually be intimate, as in they're the one who's depriving, when they actually do engage in intimacy, they actually enjoy it.
Yeah, as in they realize that, okay, wait, hold on. I married this woman. And I like her, I desire her. I married this man and I like him, I desire him.
But then the thing is, even after enjoying it, like they enjoy it just as much as the other one did. But then they have these mental blocks and barriers in their mind. They have these mental blocks and barriers inside of their mind that when it comes to the next time, they're long about it again. Does that make sense? So, but then if they were to do it, they'd realize they had just as much enjoyment and fun as pleasure as the other one. So for like most people, they they you know what I'm saying, they don't have those mental blocks and barriers inside of their mind. Does that make sense? That's why it's interesting, because I'm going to mention text to you in a second. But you know, like even kuffar, they mention that the only way to overcome this problem is to just do it. Is to just do it. Does that make sense? Is to just put the need of your spouse over your own needs, and to just do it. Now, when I tell you this from the Prophet ﷺ, you're probably, you know, going to find trouble with it. But when I tell you some kafir, PhD holder, therapist,
peer review studied, something like that.
Yeah, with 10, 20
Which
years
in
of
reality
research,
has no bearing on
they
the
say
religion.
it, you're going to take it from them. But you're not going to take it from Allah and His Messenger. So, unfortunately, let me just give it to you before we actually go into it. There's a book that I'd recommend people to look into. It's called The Sex-Starved Marriage.
Yeah.
Okay. The author's name is Michelle something.
Michelle Weiner Davis.
Yeah, Michelle Weiner Davis. So maybe you don't have to get the book, but you can maybe look up some of her studies online. Just go into Google and she's, you know, you can find the articles. I never got the book myself, but I just looked at the studies and the research and whatever have you. Because I think the book cover is inappropriate, so I didn't get the book, but I just looked up the articles and whatnot online. But it's interesting because she concludes in her study that at the end of the day, you just got to give in. You just have to have the mentality of let me do it, and a lot of the inhibitions that you have are just mental blocks. If you were to actually do it, you'd really enjoy it. Does that make sense? If you were to just do it and be less of a prude, did they say?
Prude.
Less of a prude. Yeah. To be less of a prude.
Yeah.
And to just do it.
But that's like pejorative, isn't it? It's like to be rude.
Oh.
It's not like inappropriate rude, but like people take it deep.
I don't even know what it means. I just heard it as a saying, so forgive me. But if you just stop being so frigid, can I say that?
I think that's better.
Yeah, just stop being so frigid. Just do it. Does that make sense? Just give it. Yeah. You will find that you enjoyed it, and number two, you just open up that person. Yeah. You gave them their needs, now they're going to give you back what you need.
It's almost like an exchange of trust, as in the person trusts you in their vulnerability and you meet them there. That's different to expecting them to just sort of get over it. And then also, I mean, from you mentioned about that woman and her research, she also did mention that there was a couple that she counseled. And she said what happened is they were having issues with intimacy and stuff. And after they, were intimate with one another, it was like the guy said something along the lines of, it was the best conversation I've ever had in my life afterwards. It was great, etc. And that's probably due to the release of tension. Yeah. When a person has less clouded judgment, when things are, when a storm's going on up there, it's very difficult to, navigate. But afterwards, bro, maybe your life's probably easier.
It's torture, It's literally, it's tantamount to one party within the relationship who owns the key to the toilet door, so you can't get into the crap.
Or as in like,
or the fridge.
As in, or we're not going to eat. Yeah, you can't eat anything. I'm gonna eat, but you can't eat anything. Yeah.
Or you see the toilet every time. No, go. Hold your feces in, but I have to let it out. Yeah. Hold it in, bro. Hold it in, bro. Hold it in, bro. Long. Like, let me go into the toilet. Yeah. Please let me go into the toilet. Do you know what I'm saying? No, I'm sorry. I've locked the door here. Yeah. It's a natural.
We're not saying do that. That's bad.
My point is it's torture.
Yeah, of course.
You're subject.
As in, like, imagine yourself in that situation. Yeah. That's what it's like for the other person.
And in this day and age, we put down people for wanting to express that. Yeah. Does that make sense? So now with that said, I want to come to the text.
Let's hear it.
I want to come to the text. The first thing, inshallah ta'ala, that I want to bring everyone's attention to is that intimacy is an act of worship. And through it, a person can get rewarded. There's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he said, وَفِي بُضْعِ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَةٌ. The companion said, Ya Rasulullah, they said, O Messenger of Allah, أَيَأْتِ أَحَدُنَا شَهْوَتَهُ. O Messenger of Allah, if one of us come and we engage in intercourse with our spouse, we fulfill our desires, وَيَكُونُ لَهُ فِيهَا أَجَرٌ. Are we going to get rewarded for that? Like, are you telling us that there's reward for that? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, أَرَأَيْتُمْ لَوْ وَضَعَهَا فِي حَرَامٍ أَكَانَ عَلَيْهِ فِيهِ وِزْرٌ. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that had the person had intercourse with someone that was not their wife, someone that was not halal for them, they did it in haram, would they receive sin? If they did sexual intercourse outside of marriage, outside of halal, would they be sinful? Yeah. Of course they would. So he said the same way فكذلك إذا وضعها في الحلال كان له أجر. The same way if he was to do it in haram, he would be sinful. Now if he does it in halal, he will be rewarded. The same thing that you used to get sin for, if he was to do it outside of marriage, you will now be rewarded for it if you do it inside marriage. The scholars mentioned here, do you need an intention
that's
to get rewarded? Like, for example, having a bath, having a shower, having a wash. Having a wash, is it an act of worship?
No.
Yes or no?
Well, I mean, not in its asl.
If it's with an intention.
Yeah.
If it's with an intention to uplift janaba or to follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, then you get rewarded for it.
Yep.
But if it's for tabarrud, to cool yourself down, and there's no intention, there's no religious intention here, would you be rewarded? No. Yeah. Like in here, scholars differed. They said even if you don't have an intention, will you be rewarded? Wallahu a'la wa a'lam, from the view of the scholars, that seems to be correct from what the scholars mention. The most apparent view is that even if you don't have an intention, you'll still be rewarded. Just by you coming to your spouse, merely and purely enjoying each other, the passion, the lust, the love, whatever it might be, you just get rewarded for that. This is ibadah. But if you added an intention on top of it, your reward is even more. Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, al-Shafi'i, has a qawl. Okay? He has a statement in his explanation of the Sahih of Imam Muslim. He said, فَالْجِمَاعُ يَكُونُ عِبَادَةً. He said, sexual intercourse is an act of worship. إِذَا نَوَى بِهِ قَضَاءَ حَقِّ الزَّوْجَةِ. If a person intends, he said, it's an ibadah. If a person intends to fulfill the right of his wife, or of course, vice versa, okay, or he intends through it to live in a good way with her, as in a healthy relationship. So he intends to fulfill her right, or he just intends to live with her in a nice way, intimacy, let's be happy with each other. Or through it, he intends to fulfill the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as in to fulfill the spouse's rights. Or he intends from this to want a righteous child. Or he intends from this to save him or his wife from haram, i.e. make them chaste, so they don't have to look at other men or other women, or have to wonder about seeking it from someone else. They intend to keep themselves pure by doing it with each other, so they don't fall into zina outside of the relationship. Okay? Or any other reason that is a righteous reason, the reward is increased. So it's an ibadah. The intention, as long as it's a good intention, whether it's to live with her in good, whether it's to fulfill her rights, whether it's to have a child, or to fulfill the command of Allah, or to protect each other from haram outside, you are worshipping Allah through this. You are worshipping Allah. You get rewarded. Yeah. So this is the first thing, that even if, number one, you're not feeling it so much today, but you're going to get rewarded for this. I'm sure for some, this would be half an hour of just a bit of mental discomfort. Okay. By the way, we said the discomfort usually goes away once they start. Yeah. Usually goes away once they start. Yeah. That, or perhaps, doing an act of worship that is a day long. You're doing an act of praying a lot of nafil prayers. Well, which one's harder? Or fasting a nafil fast? Which one's harder?
The second one.
The second one, right? But you see, the second one is you'll do that. You'll fast Mondays and Thursdays, but you'll not give your spouse their rights. The second one, which is the voluntary fasting, is sunnah. The first one is obligatory. Yeah. Obligatory things always bring you more reward than the voluntary things. You get ajr. You get ajr from Allah Azza wa Jal for doing this. Does that make sense? That's the first thing. Now, before we talk about the rights of the men, and before the feminists start to get really offended, let's talk about the rights of the women. Go on. Okay. Now, the women have a right to sexual intimacy. It's obligatory for the man to be sexually intimate with their spouse. Does that make sense? Obligatory for the man to do this. We know that the man has a right to sexual intercourse. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. Allah said the women have similar to what the men have. The man has certain rights, the woman has the same rights.
Mm-hmm.
Except for specific situations where there are specific rights. But if it's obligatory for a woman to go and respond to her husband's call for the bedroom, it's obligatory on the husband to respond to his wife's call in the bedroom too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's one difference though. The difference is, does the husband have to respond to every call?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know, as we're going to see in a bit, the wife has to respond to every call.
Mm-hmm.
So scholars, they differed.
Okay.
What is for the woman, it's obligatory every time he invites her to the bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
as long as she doesn't have a valid excuse, which we'll talk about shortly, inshallah ta'ala. But for the husband, does he have to respond to it? It's obligatory. But what's the frequency?
Okay.
Is it every time? Scholars discussed. They differed. Some scholars said it's based on the need of the spouse.
Okay.
If your wife, to protect herself from falling into haram, needs it every day, then she would be deserving of it every day. Okay? It would not be permissible for a man to leave off intimacy with his wife for a time that would cause her to fall into not chastity. Maybe looking at things online that are inappropriate, that would lead her to more haram. You know, like things that would be like everyone has a need. Some have a higher sex drive than others. You have to look at what your spouse's sex drive is. If for some it's not going to be the end of the world if you don't respond to a call today, but you do it tomorrow, and you have a few days gap, and it's not going to really be too much of an issue, no problem. But if this one needs it, she really needs it, then it must be given to her. Okay. Other scholars, and that view sounds to be quite strong. And that's the view that Sheikh Sulaiman al-Ruhaili, Hafidhullah ta'ala, he also took.
Okay.
And he mentioned, and he gives strength to. But there's another view, and I'll mention it inshallah ta'ala just for the sake of benefit, even though I think this one is correct. The second view is that it's 4 days. Once every
4 days.
Once every 4 days is a minimum.
Oh, okay.
Once every 4 days. And for a couple that's living, who's grown, who's got a few years, and especially they've got kids, I mean, once every 4 days is really quite reasonable.
Okay.
Because they're usually too busy to even, do more than that. But the point is that once every 4 days is quite reasonable for the woman. Does that make sense? And on a day where the woman doesn't want it, the man might. So, you're usually getting it in less than 4 anyway. But the point is every 4 days. And the istidlal here is quite interesting. There was a woman who came to as in the evidence for this that they take for the 4 days, quite interesting. A woman came to Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and she said, Ya Amir al-Mu'minin, inna zawji yasumun nahar. She said, my husband, a woman came to Umar, she said, my husband, leader of the believers, she said, my husband, he fasts all day. When yaqum al-layl, and he stands all night in prayer, meaning all day he's fasting, so there's no intimacy, and all night he's standing in prayer, so there's no intimacy. There's no intimacy. Wa ana akrahu an ashkuwahu an ashkuwahu ilayk, and I dislike to complain about him too. Okay. وهو يقوم بطاعة الله, and he stands for the obedience of Allah. So is she complaining about her husband, or is she praising him?
She's praising him, but
praising
she's
him,
also
right?
trying to just not slip it in, but
so
like
Umar
in a
didn't
sense.
Understand that.
Oh, okay.
Umar understood,
he was there like
he understood the praise. He said جزاك الله خيرا من مثنية على زوجها. He said, may Allah Azza wa Jal reward you and give you good for the praise that you've done for your husband.
Yeah.
So the woman repeated herself again.
She was there like,
she said, Ya Amir al-Mu'minin.
He's fasting all day.
He's fasting all day,
and
standing
he's
in prayer.
standing all
I don't
night.
like to complain about him to you.
Complain about him.
But he's standing for the obedience of Allah.
Yeah. Wallahi, that's a righteous woman, man.
Very
Wallahi,
righteous, right?
That's a righteous woman.
But,
she has every right to complain, innit? Like, she actually can say, listen, my husband, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. And then Umar radiallahu anhu, he would have to act on that. But she's trying to put it across in a way that also doesn't dishonor him. That's really big.
But look at this.
Allah
still didn't get it. So he repeated, Jazakallah khair. He said, Allah reward you good for the praise, where you praise your husband. Okay. So standing there.
She was there like.
Standing there was Ka'ab ibn Surin al-Aswadi. Afwan al-Azdi. He was there. He was present in the discussion.
Okay.
فقال, he said, اقضي يا أمير المؤمنين. He said, judge, oh leader of the believers. Judge. بينها, between her وبين زوجها and her husband. He said, and then Umar responds, He said, وَهَلْ فِيمَا ذَكَرَتْ قَضَى?
Mm.
He said, is there anything that she mentioned here that requires
Yeah,
judgment? Like, what are you talking
yeah.
about? Why do I need
Would
to
you,
judge?
would you judge?
What do you want me to judge? فقال, he said, إنها تشكو مباعدة زوجها عن فراشته. She said, she said, oh leader of the believers, she's complaining to you about her husband being far away from her bed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, تطلب حقها في ذلك, and she's searching for her right. She wants her right in regards to this.
Mm-hmm.
So Umar said, أما إن فهمت ذلك فاقضي بينهما. He said, if you understood that from them, you go judge between the two of them.
Mm.
You go judge between the two of them. So he comes to the house now. He comes to where they are. So you have Ka'b al-Azdi.
Mm-hmm.
You have the woman, you have the husband. So فقالت المرأة, the woman, she speaks and she recites some poetry. She says, يا أيها القاضي الحكيم رشده. She praises the judge, and then she basically mentions, my husband's far away from me, and she makes it all poetic. My husband, he's deprived me, he doesn't come to me, and so on and so forth. He's a zahid from my bed. فقال زوجها. Then the husband responds back, and he responds back in poetry as well. He says, I can't come to the bed. The things that keeps me awake is the fear of the hellfire, and I'm standing all night in prayer. And he's all poetic about it. So then Ka'b responds, also in poetry. He says to the husband, إن لها حق عليك يا رجل تصيبها في 4 لمن عقل. He said, oh man, she has a right upon you. Come to her once every 4 days. Be intimate with her once every 4 days. And then he goes on with the poetry. Then he ends, he says, إن خير القاضي من عدل وقضى بالحق جهرا وفصل. So anyway, then after that he speaks. After the poetry, he said, إن الله تعالى قد أباح لك من النساء 4. He said, man, listen. Allah has allowed you to have 4 wives. Allah has allowed every man to be able to get married to 4 women. Okay? فلك 3 أيام ولياليها تعبد فيها ربك ولها يوم وليلة. He said, from now on, you will have 3 nights. Because you have 4 nights. If you have 4 wives, then your days should be divided in multiples of 4. But because you've not got 3, you've only got 1. He said, what you will do from now on, because if you had 4 wives, you'd have to go to 1 each night. Each one deserves a night, right? But you've got 1. So he said, from now on, you will have 3 nights in which you can worship your Lord. On 1 night, you will give to your wife and you'll have intimacy with her. This is a powerful istidlal.
Yeah, very, very.
So, فقال له عمر, when he came back, Umar said to him, he said, Wallahi, ما أدري. He said, I swear by Allah, I do not know. من أي أمرك أعجب. من أي أمر أعجب. He said, Wallahi, I have no idea. Which of the things is more amazing? Which of the things is more astounding? أمن فهمك أمرهما. The fact that you understood their situation when she came and she complained. The fact that you understood what she was saying. Or you're ruling between the two of them. As in, he had powerful fiqh. He said, wait, no, a woman must be gone to buy her husband once every 4 days because of the 4 wives thing. And minimum once every 4 days, he must go to her. It's obligatory.
Yeah.
If he goes more than 4 days without giving it to her and she wants it, he's sinning. She wants it. Of course, if she doesn't want it and he doesn't want it, they're chilling. But she wants it, he's sinning. So because of his fiqh and his ilm, what did Umar say? Umar, he said to him, اذهب فقد وليتك قضاء البصرة. He said, go, I've made you the governor of Basra. Showed you. Knowledge honors you. Does that make sense? Now, this story has come in other ways, in the Musannaf of Abd al-Razzaq, rahimahullah ta'ala, and also in other places, and Imam al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, in his Irwa al-Ghalil, he authenticated it. He authenticated it in his Irwa al-Ghalil. Does that make sense? So, the 2 views are between either every 4 days, as a minimum, but if she needs it more than that,
give it to her.
Give it to her. As in, if she needs it once every 2 days, you gotta give it to her. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Now we come to the man. Now we come to the man. So, as for the man, the woman has to respond to him every time he calls, unless she's on her menses or she is sick.
Okay.
If she's sick, she's physically not able to, she's unwell, she's got a problem,
Mhm.
an actual physical inhibition,
Mhm.
like
She's sick.
She's sick,
Yeah, she's sick.
right? Or what? She's on her menses.
Mm.
Not wanting to, I don't feel like it, is not an excuse.
Mm.
Because remember, as we keep saying, marriage is about love and
Mercy. Yeah.
please, if you look with the relationship goals, especially over the last 5-6 episodes,
Mhm.
there's a sequence here.
Mhm.
You will not understand today if you've not been following us.
Yeah, you have to watch.
You really have to go back to like the 16th, 17th episode.
15th
episode. Go back to the 15th episode. Like restart relationship goals from the 15th episode. If you're a married couple, for married couples, before that we're talking about non-married couples. For married couples, we're starting from the 15th episode. Watch. This is a journey that we're taking you on. We're taking you on a journey. Does that make sense? Mercy. Does that make sense? Let me mention some evidences to you. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا دَعَا الرَّجُلُ إِمْرَأَتَهُ إِلَى فِرَاشِهِ. If a man invites and calls his wife to his bed for sexual intercourse, فَأَبَتْ, and she refuses, أَن تَجِيءَ, to come to him for intimacy, she refuses, لَعَنَتْهَا الْمَلَائِكَةِ, the angels, they curse her, حَتَّى تُصْبِحَ, until she wakes up in the morning. Pay attention. What does curse mean? Curse means الطرد من رحمة الله. It means to be tossed away from the
mercy of Allah.
Mercy of Allah. Now, if you have been thrown away from the mercy of Allah, do you have any idea how scary that is? It is only the mercy of Allah that will enter you into paradise.
No, I mean, not just that, but your day-to-day life requires the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
Yeah, just everything you are.
And
you are at literally, I know this is a common phrase that we use, but you are literally at the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
And remember what we did a few episodes ago when we talked about the episode of was it crookedness or the episode after crookedness about mercy?
Yes.
It was last week's episode 15.
Are you talking about the one that we did remote?
No.
The
Yeah, the remote one, yeah.
Yeah, that I don't know. Let me check. But it's the one where we were on Zoom.
Okay, yeah. So maybe it's the 14th episode. So I'm saying when we talked about mercy there, remember, man la yarham la yurham. Or kama qal, the one who doesn't show mercy will not be
receive mercy.
Will not be given mercy. So you have had mercy stripped from you. This is only because you've not been merciful. Sister, you've not been merciful to your husband. You've made him suffer. You've deprived him of his
That's deep.
Of his right.
That is deep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now pay attention. Does this mean that by the morning the angel will stop cursing her? Because the hadith is till the morning.
Yeah.
No, there's another narration that explains it.
Go on.
It doesn't mean that. It means until she actually does intercourse with him. The other narration mentions, and that hadith by the way is in Bukhari Muslim. The next hadith, إذا باتت المرأة مهاجرة فراش زوجها. For a woman, she boycotts the bed of her husband. She doesn't have intercourse with him. لعنتها الملائكة. The angels will curse her حتى ترجع. The angels will curse her until she comes back to have intimacy with him. So if this woman deprived her husband of 6 weeks, but I know a situation where the couple was deprived for 6 months. 6 months.
Well, that's dark, man.
Imagine 6 months, the curse of Allah, the curse of the angels descending upon you. 6 months, the mercy of Allah is being taken, the curse is descending upon you.
Yeah. And just clarify that this is a you're saying the woman was denying the husband, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a marriage that you willingly entered. This is part of the contract that you willingly signed. Obviously not physically signed, but I'm saying you willingly entered this thing, and you've held your husband captive to this requirement, or let's say this these conditions that you've laid out, and it's not fair. Wallah, it's really unfair.
Wallah, it's not fair. And just to mention it, there are a few disclaimers. A man should be conscious.
We've mentioned this many times.
Yeah, a man should be conscious
but
that,
please,
if she's having a bad day, don't.
I was going to ask that question. I was going to say, does the curse descend on the woman if the man agrees? If she says, "Look, nah," and he's like, "All right, fine, cool. I'll just take that out today. Fine."
No, she should not be. She should not say no. But they can talk and say, "Is it okay if we do it different?" That is, then husband and wife can have that mutual relationship amongst themselves. And I think most men are not gonna say, "Sure." Like, for men to go into intercourse with their spouse when they're not feeling it is like one of the biggest turnoffs. Like,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, if a woman turns around and says to her husband, honey, I'm not really having a good day today. I'm so sorry. Is it okay if I can make up to you tomorrow or later or whatever have you? Bro, I don't think a sane because he's got to be merciful as well. I don't think a merciful guy is gonna say,
no,
sure, honey.
Oh,
Yeah, as in, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
As in, yeah, sure, we can make up tomorrow. No problem.
Yeah.
But where he's gonna have issue is when he hears it every night.
Yeah.
Or if you promise him tomorrow, but then tomorrow it's the same excuse. Do you see? That's when it's gonna create issue.
Yeah.
But most situations that these are the rulings that are there, as in that's his right. And most men, because remember, he himself wants to receive mercy, right?
Yeah.
So if she's really having a bad day, she's really not into it. Like, it's upon him to say, honey, you know what? It's okay, darling.
Yeah.
But that's a fulfilled man who's already receiving. But if there's a man who's not fulfilled in the first place, he's being deprived, he's going to see it as this is just another, you're doing the same thing to me that you always do. Or the woman's going to say, you're doing the same thing to me as you always do. Does that make sense? So
and it's like a downward spiral.
It's a downward spiral. So it's a give and take. It's a both ways. But right now we're just talking about the raw right.
Yeah.
We're talking about the raw right here. As in, if he says, look, I want this. You can either leave the relationship.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
You have the option to leave.
Yeah,
if it's one of those ones where,
but you have to either get divorced or khula.
No, I'm saying there's a process. There's an avenue that you can take whereby you don't feel attracted to your husband anymore. Things are just not working out. You don't like him.
Yeah.
Fine.
I mean,
you don't have to stay.
If his sex drive is really such that it's causing you problem.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have to be in that marriage.
You don't have to stay.
Oh, you don't have to be in that marriage.
And that's
but
the
so
point.
long as you stay, you
you're
are contracted to him.
That's what.
You're holding him captive.
As long as you stay, you're holding him captive. He can't go anywhere else.
And likewise in the case of the woman.
Yeah, exactly.
If a man can't give it to her,
but
she needs it.
Yeah. Where's she gonna go?
Yeah. So then free her.
Yeah, let her go.
Free her.
Yeah, exactly.
Free her, brother. Does that make sense? Look at this next hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ مَا مِنْ رَجُلٍ يَدْعُو إِمْرَأَتَهُ إِلَى فَرَاشِهَا فَتَأْبَى عَلَيْهِ إِلَّا كَانَ الَّذِي فِي السَّمَاءِ سَاخِطًا عَلَيْهَا حَتَّى يَرْضَى عَنْهَا. The Prophet ﷺ said, there is not a man from any men. This is generalization. Whoever your man is, he's your man, right? مَا مِنْ رَجُلٍ. There is وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي. He said, I swear by the one in whose hands is my soul. مَا مِنْ رَجُلٍ. He said, I take a qasam. I swear by the one whose hands is my soul. There is no man from any men. Any man who calls his wife. He's your husband, right? He's legally Islamic your husband, right? And he calls you, right? Okay, you must now respond. If you refuse, the one who is above the heavens, Allah will become, the one who is above the heavens, subhanahu wa ta'ala, will become angry at you. He'll become displeased with you, and he will remain displeased with you until your husband becomes pleased with you. Until your husband. So now you have the angels cursing you, but you also have Allah's displeasure. And none of it will end until you go back to him. Another narration of the Prophet ﷺ mentions where Mu'adh came to the Prophet ﷺ and he made sujood to the Prophet ﷺ. He made sujood. The Prophet said, what is this, Mu'adh? Mu'adh said, I saw the people in Sham, in Syria, they were doing it to their leaders. And I thought you're more befitting. And the Prophet ﷺ, look what he said. He said, فَلَا تَفْعَلُوا. He said, Mu'adh, don't do this, don't make sujood to me. He said, فَإِنِّي لَوْ كُنْتُ آمِرًا أَحَدًا أَنْ يَسْجُدَ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ. He said, if there was anyone I was going to command that sajda should be done for them other than Allah, he's saying, don't do it to me. It's only for Allah. But if there was anyone that you should do it to other than Allah that I was going to, if there was, okay? So he's saying, if there was anyone that I will command, if there was anyone I will command to make sujood to other than Allah, he said, لَأَمَرْتُ الْمَرْأَةِ and tasjuda li zawjiha. I would have commanded the woman to make sujood to her husband because the right of the husband. Does that make sense? Then he said, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي. He said, وَالَّذِي نَفْسُ مُحَمَّدٍ بِيَدِهِ. I swear by the one in whose hands is the soul of Muhammad. I swear by the one in whose hands is the soul of Muhammad. لا تؤدي المرأة حق ربها. The woman will not give the right of Allah. She will not give Allah his right. She will not give to Allah, the King of Kings, his right. حتى تؤدي حق زوجها. Until she gives the right of the husband to the husband.
Yeah.
And then what is the context that he mentions next? He said, وَلَوْ سَأَلَهَا نَفْسَهَا وَهِيَ عَلَى قَتَبٍ لَمْ تَمْنَعْهُ. If he was to call her, he was to ask her, he was to invite her, okay, while she was on top of her camel. She's on top of her camel and she's going somewhere. She's heading out for a journey. She's on the camel saddle. She's leaving. And he says, he calls her. He calls her. She shouldn't say no. She should come back to him. Scholars differ. They say, what does this mean?
Yeah.
They say, what does this mean? Okay. Some scholars said it means the woman is actually on her camel.
Yeah.
And she's what?
Actually going somewhere.
she's actually going somewhere. And if she's literally heading, she's about to head out for a journey. Just about she's about to head out, he calls her back for intimacy. She should not say no to him.
Okay.
Another narration mentions إذا الرجل دعا زوجته لحاجته. If a husband, he calls his wife for the intercourse, okay, فلتأته, she should come to him. وإن كانت على التنور, even if she's at the oven, she's cooking her food, but the husband calls you, go to him. Actually, look at the emphasis that the Sharia of Allah Azza wa Jal has put with regards to this for the intimacy. Does that make sense? Look at the emphasis. And a woman will now tell you, I can't. You know why? I have work in the morning. She put her job. Like this woman here is on the stove. This woman's about to go on a journey. She's about to go on a travel. She's about to go. She's about to catch a flight. But her husband calls her. She has to show you the extent she has to come back. Does that make sense? Like I told you, most men are merciful.
Yeah.
Most men are going to say, oh, don't worry, honey.
Yeah.
After you finish cooking.
Yeah.
Don't worry, honey.
When you get back.
After work.
Yeah.
When you come back. Most men are going to have that mercy. That relationship is going to be there.
Yeah.
But to show you the extent to which you shouldn't be depriving him. And if you are depriving him, how evil it is. And most men, if you are in a situation where you're at the stove and he calls you and you say, I'm at the stove, and he says, no.
Yeah.
Now, it's usually in a situation where he's been deprived. It's usually when he's been quite heavily deprived. And brothers shouldn't take advantage. They should have that mercy.
Yeah, of course.
But at the end of the day, it is his right.
Yeah.
It's his right that Allah has given. Does that make sense? And a woman will tell you, oh, I've got this, I've got that, I've got my business, I've got my work. She puts that before her husband's needs. That woman, Wallahi, as we mentioned on the previous episodes, the Prophet ﷺ said that a woman who disobeys her husband, she doesn't fulfill his rights. Number one, she will not fulfill the right of Allah. It's impossible. She's not fulfilling the rights of Allah because Allah has connected his fulfillment of his rights to the rights of the husband being fulfilled. And number two, she would never taste the sweetness of Iman, as we mentioned in one of the previous episodes as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's very big. Now, one will say, okay, look, the husband's rights for intimacy are so strong. The woman's rights for intimacy are strong, but not as strong as the husband's rights. Why? Look, Allah, you've accepted He is Al-Aziz. The same ayah when Allah said, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, that they have, women have similar rights to what men have. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ, but the men have a station above. Right after, what did Allah say? That Allah is Al-Aziz, Al-Hakim. Allah is Al-Aziz. He does whatever He wants. Al-Hakim, He's most wise. He does what He wants, but what He is with wisdom. There is a wisdom in this. Whether me and you know that wisdom or not, it is there. But upon reflection, we can mention what some possible wisdoms may be.
Yeah.
The man needs intimacy more than the woman.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? A man is more of a sexually driven being than the woman is. Does that make sense? Now, it's true the woman may not need sexual intercourse as much as the man, but what she needs, the man is more willing and easier for him to give if he gets what he wants. Does that make sense?
Sahih.
And you know what's shocking?
No, not just that, but upon research we find that in terms of extramarital affairs, it's usually the men that engage in those kinds of infidelity. So I would say, there's a very strong case to be made that
of zina. And look at the men that are on pornography and masturbating and sleeping around.
It's not a completely male issue, but it's a largely male issue.
And I'll tell you something. And one other wisdom, which something that comes to mind, which is so profound, and really pay attention here, really pay attention. You know, we mentioned in the previous episode about the lack of love, and please, you have to understand the episodes are
go in order, please.
They're
go
really
in order,
connected.
inshallah.
But you know how we talked about, if the love tank, hers is empty, his is empty, and she can't give because she's empty, and he can't give because he's empty, and we said one has to give.
Yeah.
Who's the one that should stand up and usually take the L?
It's the man.
I would argue and say it's the woman, and I'll tell you why.
Go on.
Because if you was to narrow down all of the issues, she's not getting what she wants, he's not getting what he wants. If you was to bring it down, that didn't get given because this didn't get given, because that didn't get given, because this didn't get given, ultimately goes on to, it started off because of what they did in the bedroom, or they refused in the bedroom, or they weren't pleased in the bedroom, or there was rejection in the bedroom. Either side.
Yeah.
But most likely it's the man that got rejected from the woman.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? The man got rejected from the woman. Now pay attention. Why did I say so the woman should give in? Why is it that I said that the man Why is it I said that the man shouldn't just forget his lack of intimacy and just run with it? Why is it that I'm saying rather the woman should just to say, okay, no, okay, let me give you the intimacy, and then inshallah ta'ala, make the first move and hopefully get what we want. You know why? I'm going to tell it to you from Allah, but because I know the weakness of people's iman, and I shouldn't even have to do this. It's embarrassing to have to do this, but I'm doing it because I want you to feel guilty that you listen to a kafir, and that convinced you more than Allah convinced you. Because unfortunately, if I give you what Allah said, you'll be less convinced than if I was to give you the kafir. Liyasaf shadid. Does that make sense? And hopefully from this point, you'll learn to just trust Allah next time, and not to argue with him. Inshallah. Coming back to that expert, Michelle, who wrote the book, Sex Starved Marriage. Professional in this field, and this is her area of expertise, marriage counseling, everything. This is what she does. She concluded in her study, okay, that ultimately, this was her words, and you know I don't like Nike, and I don't praise Nike, and you know what I believe about Nike. I'm not doing this as a glorification of Nike, but she said, you have to have a Nike attitude of just do it. Because the sexual frustration has built up so much that it's so hard for the person to give. Remember, they are like they're feeling physical pain. They're going through actual suffering. You've deprived them of the basic right. Yes, there are layers of so much contentment, resentment and contempt and frustration. But one has to put their hand up and say, okay, but you have to understand the source. When you can clock the source is sexual deprivation, the one who's sexually depriving, that person is the one who should put up and say, hey, okay, this is where the problem is, right? Okay, let me fix it. Let me just
Isn't it? If I just do this thing, everything will get
Let
fixed.
me just do it.
Yeah.
And you know what's profound?
Go on.
Do you know when it comes to the ayah, the famous ayah, we place between the love and mercy, the one that's on everyone's wedding cards. Before that, what did Allah say? He said, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, that we made you in pairs, in a couple, married couple, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so you can find peace and tranquility. But where's the tranquility coming from? Allah said, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. Ha at the end is a pronoun. It's going back, not to the couple. It's not going back to the man. If it was going back to the man, as in to find tranquility in him, it would say لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهِ. It's لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, meaning to find peace and tranquility in her. Scholars took from this a powerful fa'idah. They said the peace and tranquility is in the hands of the woman. She has the ultimate bearing, the primary foundational bearing on how the relationship is going to go. If she just gives in, everything's going to go to normal. But if she resists and resists, the man can do everything he wants. Ultimately, that basic right that he needs, as long as she's locked the door on him with regards to that, he's never going to get it. And without that basic need, like food and drink, he can't go forward. So that's why just do it. Now, when I tell you an expert, PhD, doctor, counselor, 20 years experience, researcher, coach, science, author, best-selling author, they said it. The science is behind it. When I tell you the King of Kings, the Lord of the heavens and earth, he told you the peace, ultimate peace, tranquility is going to go back to the woman. She's got she can rock the boat and flip it over by saying, no, you're not going to get it at all. And deprive him and being insensitive to him, whatever have you. Or she's going to just allow it. And then remember, there's things to this. You married a man that was upon deen and was merciful and had good manners. So he's gonna understand that I'm not gonna oppress my wife and take advantage. If you do, if you are nice to him and he still oppresses you and violates you, you married the wrong guy in the first place. You should be watching relationship goals from the beginning. Does that make sense? So there's a lot at play here. So you married a good guy of deen, of religion, and So when you gift him, he's gonna understand. Hey, my wife is giving. Let me reciprocate now. Let me give her back. Does that make sense? And ultimately, it's gonna set everything in motion. And that's why the peace and tranquility goes back to it. And because you control the ultimate, Allah ultimately controls, but you have a huge say and a huge bearing in where this relationship is going to go, because ultimately we said it comes back down to the sexual intercourse. And if you close the door, then that's it, it's closed. Does that make sense? And society and everything's in your favor and and before you know it, it's a problem. Everyone's going to be on your side and the man is always going to be the victim. He's always going to be criminalized here. You ultimately here are you're in control. Does that make sense? And when you oppress with that kind of control, you really oppress. You destroy him. You destroy the kids that come after it. You destroy the relationships that when there's a divorce, the kids are affected. So
Yeah,
then now
exactly.
you're also affecting the kids or whatever have you.
mhm.
And then that spirals into an effect in society and community. Now to avoid all of that corruption in society
That's what I was going to lead on to.
to avoid it
Yeah.
all, Allah Azza wa Jalla oblige you every time He calls you
Yeah.
to go, even though He should be merciful every step of the way to let you take breaks and and to be merciful. But at the end of the day, if He calls you, you go, because this can corrupt societies.
Yes, that's the point I was going to lead on to. I was going to say that previously I had a conversation with Yassine on this podcast, and he was saying that the ahkam in the religion don't just pertain to you. Islam is one of the signs of the perfection of Islam is that it protects you and protects the larger community. People more than just you, as in the ta'at to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a ripple effect on the whole community. Everybody benefits from it. And from what I can see from this is that if you don't obviously if you don't give it up to your husband, there's a chance, maybe it's a small chance, maybe it's a big chance, but there's a chance he's going to go searching for it somewhere else. And that's where the corruption begins. The corruption in the society starts there.
Or he's going to divorce you.
Yeah. And there we go. Here's another avenue. Yeah.
And then if he divorces you, you're going to be sad.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to ask yourself, is the pain of divorce better
Stronger.
than just a bit of just getting over the mental block and saying, hey, let me give?
Be a bit selfless.
Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Be a little bit selfless and whatnot. You know, look, I don't want to go into like being accused of being crude or lewd, but since we're all adults here and whatnot, you know, like there are things that can aid the process. You know, number one is mentally just agreeing to it. And the point I'm making to add on to that, Abbas, is that, you know, if you're really not into it, it's a mental block.
Yeah.
Even the experts say, even you look back to your time, usually when you do it, you enjoy it. You do. But it's just the mental block that's there. Does that make sense? Yeah. And not just that, you'll feel the sweetness of Iman. And not just that, you will be merciful. So Allah will give you mercy and you'll get reward. And you're fulfilling your obligation to your husband. So now you're fulfilling the rights of Allah. And Allah will open up so much doors in your marriage.
Yeah.
You ask why you are maybe as a woman suffering and so depressed in your life. The sweetness of the mercy has been taken away. Yeah, exactly. The sweetness of Iman's been taken away. Allah is displeased with you. The angels are cursing you. No wonder you're so depressed, sister. Yeah, exactly. So many sisters complain. My life is rubbish. My husband is this. And you come back down to she's not being intimate with him. Sister, what do you mean? I understand why your life is rubbish. The angels are cursing you. Allah is displeased with you. You don't have sweetness of Iman. Mercy has been stripped away from you. This is big. Of course, it comes to the man as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, it comes to the man as well. Like, think about it, right? If a woman needs it, she needs it daily. Bro, he should be giving it to her daily as well. 100%. He's got to do the same thing. In fact, for men, you know when men deprive their wives of intimacy, it's actually a lack of manhood.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a sign of being a deficient.
Like, bro, she relies on you. You're a man. She needs you.
Yeah, like when she left her father,
you got to be there.
Everything you do for her father used to do. Yeah, you give her food, clothes.
That's the only thing that separates you from him.
So exactly. She didn't leave her father's house just to get clothes and food and for the rent you pay. Her dad used to do that. Yeah. She left because something extra that she needs from you. Exactly. And you're not giving it to her. You're less of a man now. Put your wife, get forward, like be for her as well. Selfless, inshallah. So, yeah, man, there's a lot we went through today. I feel like I rushed the topic. Do you feel like I rushed it?
No, I think we went in very well. Yeah.
I feel like I maybe waffled at the beginning. I was a bit distracted because there was a lot of background noise that you guys probably can't hear. But I hope people make it to the end.
Yeah, I hope so.
We set foundations.
It's very important. And I think this comes back to but maybe it'll be good to mention that something that I'm trying to implement in my life, which is a concept of sometimes discipline has to overtake passion. You may not necessarily have passion for this particular thing. For example, let's use an example. Let's say Fajr, in the UK it gets cold here in the summer. It's in the winter. Obviously not as cold as the other cold countries. Don't worry, don't get me wrong. I know it's freezing out there. But it gets cold, innit? And you have to wake up for Fajr and you have to get up and, maybe there's days where your Iman is low and you don't have that passion to wake up. But after you've woken up and you've done your wudu and you prayed, well, you feel this peace. Like, oh, yeah, it's there. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in me, even though I didn't really want to get up and I wouldn't have gotten up for anything else, literally nothing else. No matter how much money I was going to get, no matter how much this, no matter how much that, but I got up for this and it feels great. Do you get it? And that obviously comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So honestly, I feel like if everyone has a bit of discipline, especially considering these are rights that are owed, it's not an optional situation. This is something that you agreed when you entered this marriage in the first place. You agreed that I will owe this to my husband. I will owe this to my wife. discipline is going to have to overtake passion in those moments. And obviously passion is something that goes up and down. The whole reason why we're talking about, sometimes you're going to say no, sometimes you're going to say, is because passion goes up and down. But the reason, rather the thing that inshallah should keep you together is having that discipline, having that understanding that, look, even if my passion isn't there, it's something that's owed. I have to put it forward. And like I said before, you have to pay it forward in order to be paid back.
100%.
All of these things have a way of coming back to you.
Allah
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give it back to you in one way or another.
100%.
There's no goodness that you do in this world with the right intention, except that you will be rewarded for it, inshallah.
100%. 100%. Barakallah fi. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Are you a believer? What's the proof of your iman then? There's a beautiful hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in which he said, وَالصَّدَقَةُ burhan. Charity is a burhan. Burhan is translated as proof. But this is such a beautiful usage of the language that I must explain to you what the word burhan means. You see, the Arabs would use the term burhan to describe the rays of the sun, because the sun is always there, but you only notice it when its rays reflect and shine down on the earth. And that's why the Arabs, if they wanted to talk about something which they called hujjatul qati'ah, a clear-cut proof, something that was a clear-cut evidence for something, they would call it a burhan, describing this proof as if it was like the sun out in the sky, shining with all of its glory onto the earth. And that's the word they use to describe proof. A proof that's so clear that it's blinding you with how clear it is. And that's the word the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam chose to describe what charity does for the believer. You see, our iman is in our hearts, but also on our limbs. But a person on his limbs, he can be a hypocrite. He can be a munafiq. Charity is the thing that demonstrates that your iman is real. And if this is something that maybe didn't come to you before, and you didn't know how serious this concept was, I want to present you an opportunity that will help you. You see, the same way when you want to invest in business, you want to give to a business that's going to bring you a greater return. When you want to give charity, you also want to give in a place that will give you a greater return. Is there a return that can be greater than spending your money in the path of da'wah, in the path of la ilaha illallah, where by funding da'wah projects, you are able to facilitate for people to come to la ilaha illallah. When that happens, you don't just get the reward of the money that you gave, but you get the reward of all that comes as a result of that money. The person comes to Islam, he learns wudu, he learns salah, he learns zakat, he learns siyam, he does it every day of his life for the rest of his life until he dies. He teaches his family members, he has kids, his kids have kids, their kids have kids. All of that is on your scale. All because you gave what? Maybe £50, maybe £100, maybe less. Brothers and sisters, as you know, we have a da'wah project that we're running online, and you guys have already seen the fruits that we've been producing with the tawfiq and the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In order to allow these da'wah efforts to continue, we are in need of Allah Azza wa Jal, of you guys to be a part of this. Click the link below and donate, and this will inshallah ta'ala benefit you before it benefits the person who receives the da'wah. With that said, Assalamu alaikum, peace.